Hey everyone, we are working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Did you hear that? Did you actually just hear what Ben Johnson said where he's at and where we're at? That is the entire explanation. That is all you get. After over a year of silence, after a first-round level athlete walking the hallways of Hallis Hall as nothing more than a ghost, after one of the strangest draft pick stories the NFL has produced in recent memory, a man who was reportedly medically cleared, reportedly back on the right path, reportedly ready to compete, gone, waived 4 days before rookie minicamp without so much as a paragraph of real explanation. I'm Fave. Welcome to Fabs. And today, we are pulling back every curtain, flipping every table, and telling you everything that the Chicago Bears front office is too polished and too professional to say out loud. Because Bears Nation, this offseason, has 4 storylines, and every single one of them has fangs. Let's start where the drama is freshest, because the Zah Frasier story is exactly the kind of thing that keeps NFL executives up at night and gives content creators like me a full tank of gas. The Bears selected Frasier with the 169th overall pick, 5th round, 2025 NFL Draft, a cornerback out of UTSA. And before we get into the wreckage, I need you to understand what made this pick exciting. The Bears' director of player personnel called him unbelievable, outgoing, self-aware, a mature kid. He had led the American Athletic Conference with 6 interceptions in his final college season, setting a single-season program record. He earned first-team All-AC honors. And on top of all of that, the scouting staff noted that he might have been the fastest cornerback this franchise had ever drafted. 6'3" frame, sub-4.4 speed, press man skills. The projection was clean and simple. Tuck this developmental gem away. Let him grow inside a good system. Watch him emerge as a real contributor by year 2 or 3. That was the plan. That is not what happened. Frasier showed up to rookie minicamp in May of 2025. He was there. He participated. And then he was never heard from again. The Bears placed him on the non-football injury list in August, and Ryan Poles stepped to the microphone and said, "And I want you to absorb every word of this." He had a situation that presented itself in a category that I would say is personal. As we dug into it to try and help him out, it revealed itself as something that happened before he got here. Now stop. Stop right there. Because that sentence is one of the most carefully engineered pieces of NFL communication Fave has ever encountered. A category I would say is personal, not medical, not behavioral, not legal. Personal. A category. As though the man filed his situation under the appropriate departmental folder, and Poles was simply reading from the index. The deliberate vagueness is extraordinary. And the fact that not one person, not Frasier himself, not the team, not a single beat reporter in Chicago, has cracked open what actually happened over the course of an entire year, that is a vault. That is a sealed room. And both sides seem to have agreed to leave it that way. Fast forward to January of 2026. Poles tells reporters he had a good conversation with Frasier, that the young cornerback felt like he was in a really good place to develop and move forward, and that he would be back competing for a roster spot this offseason like everybody else. Poles even set expectations honestly, noting that Frasier had a mountain to climb just from missing so much football. But the man was apparently climbing. In January, Frasier himself posted on social media saying he had been medically cleared. No detail, no context, just the confirmation that he had crossed some threshold. Bears fans were cautiously optimistic. Frasier was expected to appear at rookie minicamp this week and start the long process of earning his place on the 53-man roster. Then, 4 days before minicamp, he was waived. Cut. Done. Gone. And the next morning, Ben Johnson stood at a podium in front of reporters who wanted a real answer and gave them the most exquisitely crafted non-answer of the entire offseason. Zah's a guy that we've had here for over a year, and it's just one of those things when we're looking at the roster, where he's at and where we're at, it was time to part ways. I have read that sentence 8 times. I still cannot tell you specifically what it means, where he's at, and where we're at. Johnson, I have immense respect for you as a football mind. But that sentence is a masterpiece of saying nothing in the most professionally polished way imaginable. Here is Fave's personal opinion on the whole Frasier situation, and I'm going to be direct about it. I do not think this was primarily a roster numbers decision. The Bears were not so flush with cornerback depth that they needed to cut a 5th-round pick 4 days before the first opportunity to evaluate him. They just drafted Malik Muhammad in the 4th round, yes, but that does not automatically eliminate Frasier from the building. It just repositions him on the depth chart. The language from both Poles and Johnson, where he's at, trajectory not aligning with what we hoped, is not roster management language. That is the language of something more fundamental. My read is that whatever the personal situation was, it did not fully resolve the way January's optimism suggested it might. The medically cleared post may have described one dimension of something multidimensional, and when the Bears dug deeper this spring, the same way they dug deeper in August of 2025, what they found told them this relationship was beyond what they could continue to support. The competition for the cornerback spot opposite Jaylon Johnson now runs cleanly between Tyreek Stevenson and Muhammad, with Terrell Smith, a 2023 fifth-rounder returning from a knee injury, also in the mix. Frasier was never going to win a starting job, but he might have carved out a depth role, a special teams slot, some return on the investment. Instead, the investment produced 0 snaps across a full NFL season and a door that quietly closed in early May. Whatever Zah Frasier is dealing with, Fave genuinely hopes he lands on his feet, as a person first, as a football player second. The chapter is closed, but it is one of the more haunting footnotes this franchise has produced in years, and the fact that we still do not know the full story only adds to that weight. Now let's pivot to something that could genuinely reshape the landscape of this Bears defense, because there is a name being whispered around the NFL right now that should have every single Bears fan sitting bolt upright in their chair. That name is Kayvon Thibodeau. The New York Giants took him 5th overall in the 2022 draft out of Oregon. He broke out in 2023 with 11.5 sacks and looked like an absolute problem, a player finally fulfilling the promise that justified a top 5 selection. And then the Giants, operating with the organizational discipline of a middle school bake sale, proceeded to acquire 3-time Pro Bowl veteran Brian Burns, draft Abdul Carter 3rd overall in 2025, and then used the 5th pick in the 2026 draft on Ohio State pass rusher Arvell Reese. At some point, you have to admit you have collected too many edge rushers the way some people collect sneakers, enthusiastically and without any real plan for what happens when the closet runs out of space. The result is exactly what you would expect. Thibodeau has emerged as the odd man out in a pass rush room that now has 3 other premium investments ahead of him. He is in the final year of his deal. He is carrying a 5th-year option worth just under $15 million. And trade calls have been coming into the Giants building for months. The Saints reportedly made a run at him and got rejected, with New York finding the offer disrespectful. The gap between what the Saints offered and what the Giants wanted was apparently the distance between a 4th-round pick and a 2nd, and neither side was willing to bridge it. But here is what everyone talking about that Saints conversation missed. That was months ago. Trade leverage is a living thing. It breathes and shifts with the calendar. The Giants at that moment had just sent Dexter Lawrence to Cincinnati and felt financially comfortable enough to hold the line on Thibodeau. That posture, and this is Fave's personal read, does not survive the full arc of a season in which Thibodeau is snapping on 3rd downs behind 3 higher priority edge rushers while collecting $14.75 million to be the 4th option on a depth chart that only has room for 2.5 full-time contributors. Now, where did the Chicago Bears fit? Precisely where you would want them to fit. Their pass rush numbers in 2025 were genuinely troubling, finishing in the bottom quarter of the league in quarterback pressure rate, in pass rush win rate, in run-stop effectiveness. Defensive coordinator Dennis Allen is working with Montez Sweat and Austin Booker as his primary edge weapons. And while there is genuine optimism around Booker's development, this defense needs proven production coming off the edge if it wants to be a playoff-caliber unit, rather than just a playoff-qualifying one. Thibodeau, at 25 years old, on a contract year, playing for his next deal, is exactly the profile of a player who rediscovers himself in a new environment. Motivated players on expiring contracts have a long and distinguished history of performing above recent projections. Ask any team that ever rented an edge rusher at the deadline for a run. The realistic trade price right now, based on where the market has moved, is somewhere in the 2nd to 3rd round range. A 2nd would be an overpay for a player coming off 2 down years. A 3rd in 2028, paired with the Bears getting an extension conversation done simultaneously, is the smart version of this deal. If the extension talks don't work, then you are gambling a 3rd-round pick on a 1-year rental, which is a bet worth considering, but only if the pass rush is still a genuine problem. 6 weeks into the season. That is the key. Do not rush this. Let training camp play out. Let the first month of the season reveal whether Booker and the current group can generate the pressure Dennis Allen's defense needs. If they can, the Thibodeau conversation becomes unnecessary. If they cannot, and the film suggests they might not, you have a known trade target, a team with growing leverage problems, and a deadline that gives Chicago every advantage in the negotiation. Giants head coach John Harbaugh said something during the draft week that Fave is going to keep in his back pocket all the way through October. He said, and this is a direct quote, "Everybody's tradable. Everybody." That is not a man who is closing the door. That is a man managing a press conference while his front office takes calls. Store the name, watch the space. And now, since we are handing out justice today, let us talk about the most disrespected man in the NFC North this offseason. The man who played the back half of a season on a stress fracture that was getting worse every week and still showed up to the biggest game of the year and delivered the most memorable catch of the entire Bears season. Rome Odunze. And I need both camps to sit down, because both of you are wrong. On one side, you have the people who watched his scorching hot start to 2025, 5 touchdowns in the first 4 games, nearly 300 yards in 4 weeks, looking like a genuine WR1 revelation in Ben Johnson's system, and declared him a future Pro Bowler forever. On the other side, you have the people who watched him battle through the back half of the season with clearly diminished production and decided that somehow this proves he is a bust. Let Fave introduce you to a concept called context, because it is doing enormous work in this situation and neither camp is applying it. Here is what actually happened. Odunze started 2025 as arguably the most impactful wide receiver in the entire NFC over the first month of the season. He was not just producing, he was dominating the target share, leading the Bears in red zone looks, leading the Bears in air yards, and doing it all while building real chemistry with a quarterback who was himself in the middle of a breakout sophomore year. Before Week 9, he was ranking inside the top 10 at his position in points per game. He was the vertical threat, the jump ball weapon, the player most tasked with the contested high-leverage catches that require elite body control and even more elite competitive fire. By every measurable indicator available at that point, this was a breakout happening in real time. And then, the foot happened. A stress fracture. Not a sprain. Not a bruise. A stress fracture that kept worsening every week he continued to play on it. And here is the part that Fave needs you to sit with. He kept playing. He did not go on injured reserve. He did not ask the team to shut him down. He kept suiting up, kept running routes, kept competing, and of course his numbers declined because he was a wide receiver playing on a fractured bone in his foot that was structurally deteriorating. The production decline was not a talent revelation. It was physics. He still finished the season with 44 catches, 661 yards, and a career-high 6 touchdowns. And when the Bears made the playoffs and needed a play in the end zone against Green Bay, Rome Odunze went up and got it, on a fractured foot, in the postseason, in a moment that now lives in Bears lore. After the season, Odunze stood in front of reporters and did not hide behind the injury. He owned the drops. He owned the struggles in the final 2 games. He was accountable without being dramatic about it, and he confirmed that surgery would not be required. Genuinely positive news heading into a full offseason of recovery and reconnection with Caleb Williams. That is the profile of a player who is hungry. And now, with DJ Moore no longer in the building after his trade to Buffalo, the target volume available to Odunze in 2026 is substantial. Moore's departure creates a real void in the passing game, a void that, if Odunze fills it fully, produces the kind of stat line that ends the bust conversation permanently and opens a very lucrative contract extension discussion. Here is Fave's personal prediction. Rome Odunze has a 1,000-yard season in 2026. Not because I am being reflexively optimistic, but because the math supports it. A healthy Odunze in a system he now fully understands, with a quarterback throwing him the ball who considers him a primary weapon, with a target share that has expanded due to Moore's departure, and with a full offseason of work with no injury management required. That is a breakout setup. The people who called him a bust are going to spend a lot of October being very quiet. Now here is the uncomfortable question that nobody in Bears Nation particularly wants to engage with, but that deserves an honest answer, because the question exists and pretending otherwise does not make it go away. What happens if Caleb Williams regresses in 2026? First, let's establish the baseline so everyone is working with the same facts. Williams broke the franchise passing record with 39.42 yards in 2025, 30 total touchdowns, 7 interceptions, an interception percentage that was tracking toward historic territory. His improvement from year 1 to year 2 was not marginal. It was dramatic. His success rate jumped from 39th in the league to 22nd. His pressure-to-sack conversion went from one of the worst in the NFL to one of the best. He earned the nickname Iceman for engineering a NFL record 7 fourth-quarter comebacks and game-winning drives. The Bears went 11-6, won the NFC North, and knocked the Green Bay Packers out of the playoffs in one of the most electric moments this franchise has produced in a generation. That is the foundation. That is the starting point for any discussion of what happens next. But here is what the optimists are perhaps not fully accounting for. The rest of the NFL now has a complete season of film on Caleb Williams. Defensive coordinators will scheme against his tendencies, his mechanics under pressure, his preferred release windows, the leverage points in his decision-making. They always do this. Every breakout quarterback goes through a second adjustment after the league gets a full year of tape. Some navigate it seamlessly. Some struggle for a stretch before adapting. The question is, which category Williams falls into? And the honest answer is that we do not know yet, because this is literally the first time he will have faced a fully prepared NFL defense in year 3. On top of the schematic adjustment, the supporting cast around Williams has genuinely changed. DJ Moore is gone. Moore was the veteran safety blanket, the experienced route runner who could bail Williams out when a play broke down and the quarterback needed a quick, reliable outlet. That role is now uncast. Luther Burden had a promising rookie year, but is still establishing himself as a consistent NFL receiver. The offensive line has questions at center, with Garrett Bradbury filling in while rookie Logan Jones develops. These are not catastrophic concerns, but they are real variables that did not exist in 2025. If Williams has a genuinely difficult stretch, say a 3 or 4 game run where the turnovers spike and the completion percentage drops and the radio hosts in Chicago start doing their thing, here is Fave's read on how the organization responds. They do not panic. They do not overreact. They pick up the 5th-year option if it hasn't already been decided. They call for patience publicly, and they lean on the 11-6 record and the franchise quarterback credibility that has been built. You do not abandon a 24-year-old with Williams' arm talent and his improvisational brilliance and his competitive fire because of a bad month. You certainly do not blow up the infrastructure around him. You stay the course and you trust the process that produced an 11-win season in just year 2. But here's the thing, and this is Fave being completely direct with you. I do not think regression is the likely story. The system familiarity that comes with year 3 in Ben Johnson's offense should make the easy throws easier and give Williams more mental bandwidth to manage the hard ones. The scramble drill 4th and 8 against Green Bay was not an accident. That was a quarterback who had outgrown the anxiety of the moment and started playing free. Players who reach that psychological state tend to build on it, not retreat from it. Caleb Williams is not going backwards. This organization is not going backwards. The question is not whether the Bears are good. The question is whether they are ready to be great. Let's bring it home, Bears Nation, because there is one more thread worth pulling before we close this thing out. And that is the broader picture of what this roster actually looks like heading into 2026 beyond the 4 big storylines we've been unpacking. The pass rush conversation does not begin and end with Thibodeau. There is a free agent market that still has real options. Veteran edge rushers with proven track records are available right now and could be added without surrendering a single draft pick. The Bears' organizational posture seems to be, let us evaluate what we have through OTAs and training camp before we commit resources to what we might not need. That is disciplined. That is how you build a sustainable contender rather than a one-year rentals collection held together with duct tape and wishful thinking. If Booker and the current group generate legitimate pressure through the first month of the season, the Thibodeau conversation becomes optional. If they do not, and I want to be clear that the 2025 numbers suggest this is a real risk, then the market will still have options. And Poles has demonstrated he is not afraid to be aggressive when the moment demands it. He checked in on a trade for Max Crosby before that deal fell apart. That is not a passive general manager. That is a man with a watch list. The Malik Muhammad drafting deserves real acknowledgement here. The Bears traded up to secure him in the 4th round, and he now enters a cornerback competition opposite Jaylon Johnson that is wide open and genuinely interesting. Tyreek Stevenson has the experience and the reps. Muhammad has the upside and the organizational investment. Whoever wins that job shapes this secondary for the next several years. That is not a depth chart footnote. That is a foundational piece of this defense being decided in training camp practice reps over the summer.